Hey, welcome friend in Quick Digital Book. Today we will discuss one of the famous book in software development life cycle, which is Clean Architecture, written by Robert C. Martin. We will cover chapter 1, 2 and 3 out of 34. So this is very wonderful book, guys. I would highly recommend you should read this if you are part of a software development life cycle. He has mentions in his first lines that all the key stakeholders involved in the development life cycle should read this book. And what is the benefit? So the benefit you will get, that you will understand that what is the benefit of having the architecture in your application, how you will build a software which will run for the longer term, and how you will get the return of investment of the business user. He mentions one question, that what is the difference between design and architecture. There are a lot of confusions. He said that for startup maybe it's not matter, but people who are very well in the development life cycle, it's very important for them. So confusion is the architecture, is it a outer side like a house, or is it a inner side like all cables and all these things. So he said it should be both. It should cover all the detail. It shouldn't be like a simple PowerPoint slide that won't be considered as architecture. The goal for the architecture is always to minimize the resource and develop a product which will reduce the maintenance in future. He gave a very good example of a case study which is based on some real data, that how the productivity of the resource growth in a company went up and up, but at the same time the product delivery quality went low. So the business users were looking that they were getting growth in the resource and big releases, but the line of cost, the cost of line was getting higher and higher. So then he mentions what is the signature of maze, like when the business and companies should know that something is going on wrong and they need to take a decision. So he gave a very good example of similar data, that how the monthly pay in an organization were going up. At the same time they were getting a big releases saying that we are releasing 20, 30 and 500 things, bugs, feature. But at the same time, if you compare the productivity, the actual productivity, which is very important, you can see in the month of March, April, it went down. So that's the issue. So what went wrong? So he has clearly mentioned with very simple example that slow and steady wins the race. So he basically gave an example of tortoise and hare, that how it's important that you should take your time in the architect to implement the right architecture and the best practices. While concluding his first chapter, he has clearly mentioned that organizations should take it more seriously, that architecture has a key part. So then second chapter he said the tale about two values, like business basically getting some line of code from the developer and which understand the machines, and that gives some output. The second approach could be that does the same thing but with in a good manner with proper architecture. And then he mentions like what is the software architecture. So software architecture, he mentions soft means software means product. So software should be very soft. It can be easily modified, can be extended, and can adopt the new time era. He gave an example of the developer. Developer will like always ready to change the code and take the requirement, modify the software, but that slowly and gradually will create a lot of issue. The cost which you are putting in developing a small thing, fixing intermediate changes will be too high, and then you won't get a feature properly. He given two example, that what you will suggest if a program is easy to release but it won't work for the longer time. But second example, programmer is difficult to release but it may run better in the longer time. So he was saying second example is much better. Then he gave an example of Dwight D. Eisenhower. He gave a chart saying that what should be the priority while picking the task. He gave 4 example: critical and immediate, critical but not immediate, not critical but immediate, and some uncategorized. So the biggest mistake which the stakeholders are doing is they are trying to say that not critical but immediate becomes the critical and immediate. So it means you won't get time, and you need to develop very fast. So that's the issue. So business should understand, because they don't understand the architecture. They basically focus on the business need. So he mentions what is the role of software developer in that case. Very good example. They should fight, they should maintain the software at the same time. So basically they always feel that they are part of all the software development life cycle, and they always fight for getting the architecture right. They should buy out some time to make it right first time. And software architecture responsibly in that case is just double compared to developer. So he gave an example that if the architecture is coming last, then it means something is wrong in your development life cycle. He gave an example from a speech. And in third, he gave that when we started the programming part, what is the paradigm of that, like when we started and where we are. So he was talking the whole history about the programming. He basically started with Alan Turing, who was basically founder of computer programming in London. And he wrote first program where he was using some variables and assigning some values. So this is his thesis. You can see some line of typical code in programming. And that program, as I mentioned, it's covering all the assignation and the stakes. And the next era for programming was started from 1940 to 1951, and it came with the Grace Hopper, who she was American computer scientist. She did a good part in assembly languages, and then there were few languages came: COBOL, C++, and Java. And now author, he's trying to focus on 3 main paradigm: the structure programming, object oriented programming, and functional programming. So in our next video we will discuss in depth about this topic. Thanks for watching this video. Thanks all.